All right, guys, this week we are having a special guest. We're having Don Wiggins of Dear Divorce Diaries, and we're sitting down talking about marriage counseling and what you can kind of expect, just more about the whole world of going through a divorce and how we can actually correct ourselves and keep ourselves from experiencing that type of pain. Talking about that this week in episode 252 of The Relaxed Male.
This is The Relaxed Male, a show that comes to you each week helping men to remove the nice guy from their life so they can actually live their life on their terms. Join the host, certified coach Brian Goodwin, as he helps men step out of their heads and become free from the thoughts that bind them.
All right, man. Today I have a special guest. Don't normally bring guests on, as y'all know, but today had one that just really kind of sparked my attention and drew some interesting thoughts into the whole relationship issues that we run into. And so we have Don Wiggins, and she is with Don Wiggins Therapy. She also is the host of the podcast Dear Divorce Diary. And we are going to be sitting down and talking a combination of what divorce, or not divorce, but but marriage therapy and couples therapy is like, but also going to kind of talk a little bit about what being conflict avoidant is and what to do about that, because there's so much in that one I don't personally fully understand, knowing that I do like to avoid conflict at all possibility. And I think most men do, most people typically do. And that is just a topic that as to how do we change that so that we can step into a little bit more of the conflict and be able to have a relationship that is, lack of better words, worth fighting for. And so I want to welcome again, folks. This is Don Wiggins. And Don, how are you today?
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for having me and for that intro. I love these topics we're going to talk about today.
So,
I think, to your point, if people, specifically, right, your listeners, could tolerate conflict more, exactly what you said, a relationship worth fighting for. Wow, that's so powerful.
I'm not sure. I think I heard of somebody have a podcast that was that utilized either that term or that might have been a close to their show title or something. But
and
yeah,
it's stuck. Yeah,
we do have to fight for that connection. Fighting for Connection is the name of the podcast. That's
there we go. Yeah, bringing it right
around there. So, but we struggle in so many different ways to have that connection. I see men who just are either in tears or on the verge of tears, in frustration of self-defeat and all that, those other types of disempowering thoughts, bring them into not into pulling them out of the game entirely. And that is, a lot of it is because we don't like to fight. We've been raised to not fight, to not argue. We get around into arguments, and our parents jump all over us and yell at us because we have a disagreement. We're supposed to get along, and so we get along, and then we don't know how to actually have arguments. And so when it comes to conflict avoidance, what's a more accurate way to describe what it is?
Oh, I think you're doing a beautiful job, but I would say at the core, I'm going to oversimplify it a little bit, okay? But at the core, I would say that we are emotionally avoidant. We, especially today in a modern society, really struggle to tolerate our own emotional processes. And I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, right? Like, what does it mean to process emotion? We all have emotion every day. But I get a lot of clients in that are like, I don't know, do I feel mad, sad, glad, afraid, ashamed every day? Is that true? Do I? That we're really emotionally cut off.
Right.
Brene Brown would say, we're comfortably numb. We use our beer and a banana nut muffin and maybe a ball game to just stay like really comfortably numb. I don't know about you. I watch my husband play a lot of games on his phone, right? That's comfortably numb. We
Right.
stay super busy with the kids, with work, with whatever. So busy, we're distracted from what we're feeling. And all those feelings are just piling up inside of us
Mhm.
with no real skills to like healthy emotional skills to process what we're feeling. And then the first time somebody pierces that veil, like, just like pokes through that thin
Look
kind of
through it. Yeah.
membrane, right? Like all of a sudden we're flooded with emotion and it feels like, so overwhelming. Our nervous systems are like, what the actual, are we allowed to curse on your
Oh,
podcast?
heck yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what the actual fuck? Um, and and many people shut down
Right.
when there's that much emotion, right? Because it's just like a backstock, It's like talk about like doomsday prepping. It's like we're stockpiling emotions, like as though, we're never gonna have any ever again. And
Absolutely.
so and so that's it, right? We're overwhelmed by our own experience of our emotion, and then we just are like, I'm out of here, and we
Yeah.
run,
Yeah.
yeah, from what we're
Yeah.
feeling.
Just
Mhm.
become completely washed. We avoid them enough to where when we do actually have a an explosion of emotions, we
Mhm.
become just exhausted from it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been times where we see guys who are just emotionally done. They're not even they've tried to hold it together and try
Mm.
to through whatever means, whether it's
Mhm.
through using other
Yes.
indulgent emotions or even buffering of some sort
Mhm.
with alcohol or other
Yep.
types of
Yep.
drugs or
Yep. Porn. Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
porn,
Mhm.
food, video,
Food. That's right. That's right. Food. Hmm.
and I mean we all find ways to drown out whatever that uncomfortable sensation is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's it. The biggest thing that I've been just trying to show guys is that, yeah, their emotions are just a vibration they feel throughout their body. And that's
But modern society is not set up for men or women, but especially men, to process emotion, right? So many, I know you know this. I've heard you talk about it, right? So many men sit at a desk, or I don't know, just don't we're not outside, we're not using our bodies, we're not chopping wood, we're not hunting, we're on screens, we're not gathering in groups in a meaningful way, we're not talking in a meaningful way. It's like we're just so disconnected, so independent, so sort of like shells of ourselves, right? I think that I've heard you share that, we need to do dangerous things. We need to be an adventure. We need, like, men need those things to really feel in touch with
absolutely.
themselves and to process what they're feeling. And there's just not enough of that these days. I've, had the opportunity to speak with G.S. Youngblood, the author
Oh,
of
okay.
The
Yeah.
Masculine in Relationship,
Yeah.
and where I've seen so many of even my own clients kind of miss the mark when you're trying to embody work like The Art of Masculinity, right? Is that okay, I've read these books, I've read these concepts, I'm studying masculinity, but then missing it about the piece of needing to embody it, right? Needing to actually do the physical acts. And it's a physical act
Yeah.
of feeling emotion, expressing emotion, getting out of your body, reducing that stockpile and getting comfortable with the experience
Yeah. I
of
like to call that
feeling. Yeah.
difference between passive and active learning. Yeah.
Yes. We can't think our way out of emotional
Yeah.
problems. And that's the default where people default to. And that's what just leads to this kind of chronic conflict avoidance, right? I
Right.
think that if we were outside, if less people had lawn guys, like how often do
Yeah.
my husband and I, we get out there and we like, do the hedge trimming and the lawn mowing. That's all good for us. It's like helping us really move that stuff out of our bodies. And it's just
Absolutely.
not how we live in modern society.
No, and it's not. And I mean, and I get even the last few years has appeared to become more dangerous.
Mm, mm,
It's there's there are little instances and spikes of where, yeah, society has gotten a little dangerous here, a little more dangerous there, but as a whole, we are actually safer. And I think
Mhm.
sadly, so many of us are tied into uh, our phones and into television and the news so much that we've gotten so scared to even go outside hardly at all.
Amen. Amen. You know, my family and I, we went for a hike one day not that long ago, in just like a local, kind of park or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I decided to put my phone down, like to hide it in a bush at
Right.
the front. And I think my husband had left his phone in the car or something like that. And so the three of us are in the woods, right? And I'm listening to the conversation about my daughter, like, but we don't have a phone. But what if we get lost? But neither of you have phones, like, right? And the level of anxiety she had about no one had a phone on this hike. And so we started talking. My husband is the guy you want on your survival team. Like, he's that guy. He's like super MacGyverish, right? And he's gonna build you a structure in, I don't know, Lord knows what, right?
We got shelter in 2.9 minutes. It's no
That's
problem.
right. That's right. And so we started talking about, well, what would we do? Right? What would we do? And how would we find our way? And what if it rained? And that capacity for survival without our comfortably numb tools is what we're really disconnected from. And it's really what we need to get back to. This confidence in our ability to provide and care for ourselves. And then I think women lose faith in men as these kind of providers and protectors.
Right.
And now it's all askew. That typical masculine and feminine polarity is all askew because we're all just kind of in victimy, numb, zombie. Like I always say, the zombie apocalypse is now. It's already happening. We're just right. Yeah. We just walk around with these like glowing things in front of our faces, like zombies, and that is the root, I think, of so much conflict avoidance.
So much of the conflict and dis-ease that we face.
That's right.
Today. Yeah. And so what is it about that you've seen in your therapy? What is it that is what is it about conflict avoidance? Why is it so hard for us to be able to step through that barrier of, because I mean, I know we all run upon our unintentional thoughts, like, oh, she's going to yell back at me, or even, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to, we were supposed to have sex tonight, but now we're in this argument. So that's all out. Congratulations. I'm not going to get any for the next 2 months.
Gosh,
brain loves to go overboard in that. But how do we stop getting, when we start finding ourselves in that mental degrading loop of doom? What is there that we can do as people in general to stop, so we can actually even be aware enough to not avoid the conflict?
Yeah. So I don't think you're gonna like my answer.
Good.
So, because there's no quick fix, right? And so I could say, oh, in that moment, if you could stop what you're doing and you could do a series of EFT tapping. Have you ever, I don't know if you have an EFT episode.
Actually, I have a friend who is very much into tapping.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's had me do the thing, thing. And I think there's someplace like,
I usually, like there's the brow. That's right. So, I could say to you right now, like, oh, Brian, have you heard of this tool? It's called EFT tapping. And in that moment where you're having that flood of emotion and that rush of thoughts, that EFT tapping, it uses the energy meridians and it's going to help move that energy through your body. And you're just going to feel a shift, right? And that's a sexy answer, but it's sort of bullshit. It is and it isn't, right? Like, so. Yeah. So I love EFT tapping. It's a core tool that I promote with anybody and everybody that I work with. And the more you use it, the more effective it's going to be. Right. But I think that is sort of a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound with regard to where most people are.
Yeah.
Right. So if I say to you, use that EFT tapping and you do it, right? Let's say you're like, oh, what did that lady say on that podcast at one time? And then you do it and it doesn't work. You're like, this shit doesn't work.
Bullshit, yeah.
And then you don't do it again. Right. And so it does work. But the problem is the thing that I would call men, anyone, right? I say this, I preach this to my women listeners, but I would say this to men too. You have to make a choice that you're going to take responsibility for your life.
Right.
In ways that you don't even realize you're not doing. And I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, the victim mindset, right? And so I think that men so often do not realize how much they are slaves to the dopamine reward system in their brains, right? And you mentioned like, oh shit, we're not gonna have sex tonight. Do you know how many men I have seen like absolutely be willing to torch a marriage because they can't have sex on demand? Or, when it's suggested that they put porn away or they don't drink or they don't, whatever it is that they're using to get that dopamine reward hit. And I really think that as a society, so I'm not calling out men over women. I swear this is like, I think accountability is.
There's actually a lot of women who are starting to show up in porn addiction groups now, which is just
mind blowing.
Slabbered on that one. Is like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I actually do. I thought that was just a guy centered thing.
Yeah. No, because we're all really, really, really disconnected from ourselves and from each other, right? And so what do you do when you're having those thoughts? It's like, well, do you notice how often you're feeling sort of like you're low energy, like you're sort of depressed, like everything is sort of meaningless? It's like, are you going to do something about that? Like, and I don't mean like lowercase d do. It's like uppercase all caps, do something about that, right? And I think that the more we expect the government to save us, the more we expect our spouses to save us, the more we expect our bosses to save us, to rescue us from what we're feeling or not feeling, the more ineffective we're going to be in those moments where it's like, I don't want to have this fight right now. I just want to get laid. That is the problem, right? And so it's sort of like a call to action, like, yes, I want you to EFT tap. I want you to EFT tap every damn day. Right. But bigger than that, I want you to learn how to live a big, glorious, messy life.
Yeah.
That's not so comfortably numb. Does that feel like an answer to your question or no? Or does it feel useful?
It does. It's and I kind of expected a bit of that. Just it's because we do when we're normally when we're in the moment of arguing with each other and we're fighting against whatever it is we're doing. I get that we're so locked into, oh my gosh, it's the fight of our life. We've got to survive this attack that we're doing upon each other, that, we're in that survival mode. Mm-hmm. And so, to sit there and jump out of survival mode, go, oh yeah, I gotta tap my face.
Tap my face. Yeah.
And do all that. And you're not going to, especially if you don't know how to do that, all the tapping and stuff.
Well, it's just an example of a tool that helps move emotion, right? Or helps with embodiment, it's a somatic technique, right? But why are our nervous systems perceiving a fight with our wife as a nervous system threat? Like, why is that even happening? Because it's not rational, especially for men who are, from an evolutionary perspective, able to go out and fight the lion.
Clunk a dinosaur on the head and drag
That's right. Why, getting into a fight with your wife, why is that so threatening? It doesn't add up, right? So we have to look at, why does this feel so? And I think that when you talk about the pillars of masculinity, when your wife is sort of your only close contact or your only source of what you perceive as love or connection, then when that gets threatened, it feels like
out of the village.
World. That's right. When you don't trust yourself, and maybe that's because your parents taught you not to talk back, or maybe that's because your wife emasculates you all the time, or maybe that's because, your boss, when you don't trust yourself, when you don't trust in your capacity to provide and protect. And so I think it's these sort of big, big issues, like self-trust, like self-respect, like community, like, like physical strength. How many men, have let go of being physically strong? Right. A lot.
Yeah. Oh no, very much so. I mean, there's a lot of guys who just who don't try to go forth and take care of themselves. And I mean, and that's when it comes to like one of the big things I hear society go about and I use society just as the big general.
Sure.
But you know, that you hear a lot of folks say like women don't have power. They're they're fighting against the patriarchy and all that.
Mm,
And I think back to when my grandma and my granddad were both alive. My
mm,
granddad, good 6'2",
mhm.
6'3". At least that's the way he seems when I think back to him. Big, huge, barrel chested guy,
Yeah.
deep,
Yeah.
deep voice, and when it boomed, that was God speaking. And
Yeah.
my grandma
Uh-huh.
was just a little sweet little old lady. But
Hmm.
if she was mopping the floor, that man did not go into the kitchen.
There was respect. Yeah.
It was, I'm not going. He would take his boots off and he would go to the front door because he's used to coming in through the garage. But he'd open the door up and see wet floor, shut the door and come in the other way with his boots off. And yeah, there was that women do have a tremendous amount of power. It's just not men's power. And sadly, a lot of guys have given up what their power is.
Yes. Yes. And women have forgotten that they have any. It's not that we don't. We have women have tremendous power, but we've forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, if
And
anything, to point back to sex, I mean,
mhm.
we may want it all the time, but it's
Yeah.
women who finally get to decide, yeah, okay, yeah, we're
Mhm.
gonna have fun, or no, not having fun tonight, and
Mhm.
it's all in their choice.
Well, I think that's the whole point of connection and intimacy, right? Is that
Absolutely,
yeah, we're better together, but that has to be that requires mutual vulnerability,
yeah,
mutual openness,
vulnerability,
mutual
respect,
collaboration. Yeah. Yeah.
and so
I love that picture you painted though of like, little Ma
yeah,
having power with, not over, right, but power with Pa. Yeah, like and that came via respect, mutual respect. It's beautiful.
yeah, and and uh, it's one of those times where, like, yeah, guys, we've got so much power. I mean, we are people automatically turn to the man in the room when there's a big problem.
Mm,
And I mean, we've told ourselves and we've listened to so many people who honestly don't have any any authority over us as to going, hey, yeah, you don't have you need to abdicate your power for these people. And it's like, no, we don't. But and I think a lot of that abdicating because men don't feel that they have that type of power
mm-hmm.
um, is causes that lack of being able to step into the conflict. So
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
in your view, how do guys step in? Because there's some that I understand will have a tendency to go overboard and, oh well, I'm supposed to take my power back, and so they're going to go because the nice guy is are the nice
Passive.
guy
Mm-hmm.
is very passive. And when you tell nice guy to stop being a nice guy, they go, oh, so I'm supposed to be a jerk. And it's like, no,
That's right.
you're not supposed to
Yeah,
be a jerk either. A nice guy and a jerk are two sides of the same asshole.
that's right.
And so you got to stop. You got to start being accepting to the fact that everybody else is going to have their own emotions. So, so when a guy, and especially a nice guy, a guy who is used to not or not embracing the conflict and not stepping into and facing that conflict, that fight, that disagreement that's going on with their wife, what is there anything that, yeah, we can learn to calm ourselves down,
Mm-hmm.
but is there any
Bring
other
water
way
to the
that we
fire.
could be
Mm-hmm.
present
Mm-hmm.
with the circumstance so that we can actually understand, hey, I'm not dying here. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife is, I've got a foot over my wife. She's not going to punch me in the nose unless she tries real hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, you're describing my marriage, right? Like I'm a pistol.
Yeah, my
and,
wife is too. Oh.
and my husband is a recovering nice guy, right? And he's also the guy you want on your survival team, right? He
Yeah.
is strong. He's physically strong. And but it has been a years long process of me in my pistol-y ways
Right.
telling him to stop being a nice guy, right? And I don't think that every husband has a wife who's asking her husband to retire from nice guyness,
Right.
right?
And I think that also has to do with the fact that you are aware enough that
Yes.
I know where you're hanging out at. Come on, hubby. I want you to be the man that I need you to be.
That's right. That's right. And I didn't always do it in such a, lovely way either. That has been my own work as well. But my husband has read GS Youngblood's work, all of it, right? He's done the workbooks. He does the EFT tapping. He's studied Joe Dispenza, practiced meditation, and he doesn't do all of this all the time, right? But when we have conflict, and I would say that, this is a great example. Like my marriage is a fantastic example. Very, very often when I'm upset about something and I can see him spiraling,
Uh-huh.
the first thing he does is he gets defensive,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We always do.
which then I escalate.
Yeah.
Is that relatable?
Very much. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my wife to a T. Exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Got a six
And
foot,
so then I
6'2"
escalate, right?
guy
And
and a
so,
5'4" woman. And yeah. We're just,
yeah. And so it's taken a lot of practice on his part to be able to use breath work, like literally like calming breaths,
uh
to ground himself, to EFT tap. But also, let me talk about some of these other things that are in real life, right? In the last couple of years, my husband has launched his own carpentry business.
Oh,
And
awesome. Good
in
job.
doing that, he got back to his roots, right? He had done a lot of office work for a segment of time. He grew up sort of blue collar, did some office work. He was depressed doing office work. He got back to that roots of what is in his human design, what really brings him joy. And in that, finding success and living in his gifts,
Uh-huh.
guess what? He fights better,
Yeah.
right? He fights
That's
better.
it.
And so he's using his body and he's doing all of this, right? Now, also in the last couple of years, I've started practicing homeopathy, and we don't have to get into this whole massive loop, but I will say
Okay.
that has been a game changer. It's energy medicine. It has helped resolve probably some low grade depression for him.
Okay.
Probably some childhood wounding for him. And so he's just happier in general. And
Okay.
I think more confident in general. And so then he fights better. And it's great when we fight. Like, I don't know about you and your wife, but when we have a successful fight, I'm more attracted to him.
Right.
And I think that's true for most women. There is an emotional intimacy that comes with resolving conflict together, right? And so I think it's like overall, if a man can say to himself, like, am I genuinely happy? Do I feel, I know this is another one of the pillars of masculinity, right? Am I living in my purpose? Do I feel purposeful? Am I using my body? Do I feel physically strong? If a man can't say yes to a lot of those things, he's going to shrink in a fight.
Okay.
With his,
Absolutely.
So it's a heavy lift. It's a big lift. It's not there's no quick
it
fix.
is.
Yeah.
Okay. So jump back over onto the homeopathy.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of us guys, when we hear something like that and it's energy work, we're like, oh gosh, it's that, it's the hippy dippy, moving of energy thing.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of guests who that's what they were all about. They were all about using energies and things like that. And the way they kind of described it was very, very woo woo.
Yep.
But at the same time, there is a bit of an element in there that makes a bit of sense. There's a lot of it that doesn't, but at the same time, that's just out of ignorance.
I think so.
So
I'm going to go all the way to the heart of it. You can do with it what you will. Okay. So my belief system is such that there is an intelligent creator. I don't know who he or she is, right? But there is an intelligent creator that created this spinning ball that we live on, and that our bodies were designed to heal themselves. The nervous system integrates, right, with this meat suit in a way that there's this constant feedback loop between the brain and the body, right, that allows it to determine whether or not it's safe or not safe and all of this, right? It's a very, very complex system. And that everything we needed to heal ourselves already exists on this spinning spaceship. And that there are a lot of ways in which we have denied as a human race, right? That energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transmuted.
Right. Okay.
And that's the core of really how I practice therapy. It's the core of EFT. It's the core of EMDR therapy. It's the core of homeopathy, right? That it's the core of chiropractic. That that if we do not transmute stuck or blocked energy or negative energy, it's going to create disease processes in our bodies.
Okay. Okay.
And so I think that when we eat shit food, when we don't move, when we take a bunch of like when we're over medicated, right? Over prescribed, which most of America is, we have the worst health outcomes really almost in the world. Not the worst, but it's pretty bad, especially considering we're a first world country, right? Over medicated, junk food, not moving, right? And these are creating disease processes.
Absolutely.
So homeopathy is a very old concept that can be traced back even before Hippocrates, but Hippocrates is the father of modern medicine. And Hippocrates even identified that like cures like. If you think about antibiotics, that is a like cures like concept. We're using bacteria to kill bacteria, right? We pulled something from mold that is going to kill bacteria, right?
Yeah.
And so homeopathy in Latin means similar suffering. And it's the idea that
Okay.
that what is the curse is the cure, right? So something similar, isopathy would be like snake venom being the antidote to a snake bite, right? It's very, very similar concept. And so in homeopathy, it's the idea that Hahnemann in 17 something, who was studying medicine of the time, which was largely bloodletting and all of this kind of using mercury to treat STDs and cinchona bark to treat malaria. Hahnemann, this doctor at the time, asked himself, why is cinchona bark so successful at treating malaria? And he decided one day he didn't have malaria, but he's like, I'm going to ingest this cinchona bark and I'm going to figure it out. So he eats enough cinchona bark to create a toxic effect. And that toxic effect looked like malaria. And he was like, So there are all these substances in nature that have a matching energy signature for our disease patterns. So a very common remedy for men who have low-grade depression and tend to bottle things up is natrum muriaticum. What is that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Well, what is
It's the
that?
energy signature of salt. So what happens when salt water dries up, right? You've got this crystallized, hard
Right.
substance, right? So you give a few doses of natrum muriaticum, and all of a sudden men who have this low-grade depression and difficulty expressing themselves all of a sudden become very, very fluid. It's been a very successful remedy for my husband. It has given him his words in fights where he would just shut down and get defensive and be locked inside of himself. It's been very, very effective at helping him loosen up. You can get these remedies on Amazon. They look like this, right? They're just a little purple tube. You can usually get them at your local health food store.
Yeah.
And this is a complete medicine system that would put the pharmaceutical companies out of business. And there you have it. There you have it. Right?
And
Yeah.
I
And
used for the
so,
longest time, I was one of those where, I'd hear people say, "Oh, it's big pharma," and it's like going, "Well, yeah, they're big because they're providing a service, but
is the service working?
and
Are we healthy?
There's to a point, it has allowed our life to increase our livelihood tremendously, and so there's a part of me that's going, yeah, it's done what it's needed to do." But at the same time, you start to see, I guess, in the age, just being older now, I look back on it and it's like, okay, probably really don't need to be. I mean, you hear the side effects of all the drugs on television, and you're like going, all right, and might cause possible death. It's like, yeah, that's a
Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? Yeah.
a drug I want to have. What was one? There was one that just cracked me. I can't remember what it was, but one of the side effects was anal leakage, and I was like,
right, exactly.
There's a winner, isn't it?
But antidepressants, while they have helped pull many people off the brink of suicide and that kind of thing, there are homeopathic remedies for suicidal depression and depression that work within minutes or hours. And so let's say you put somebody on an antidepressant because they're deeply suicidal, and that's the heroic nature of pharmaceutical companies, right? Thank God we have these things, we might say to ourselves, but they were never meant to be relied upon long term.
Now, and when it comes to the antidepressants, the SSRIs and things like that, that's probably the start of me kind of going against pharmaceuticals because,
Yeah.
and it's not so much pharmaceuticals as it was almost lazy doctoring.
Yeah, that's right.
And because I had my oldest daughter, her mom was having some behavioral issues with Kira, and it was like, all right, took her to a doctor, and the doctor was like, all right, well, here's
a prescription.
and it's like, it's a 10-year-old kid. I mean, come on. And you look through it, and it's not approved for for anyone under the age of 18. And then we start wondering,
they're putting 3 and 4-year-olds on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds now.
And we wonder why there's school shootings.
Yep, that's right. Because that's right. That's right.
They don't have one. Emotions are the coloring of our memories.
Oh, you can't have empathy when you're flat, right? Yeah. Like, so whether you're depressed or you're over medicated, you're flat and you're losing track of empathy, right? And there's so many things in society. When you're comfortably numb, you cannot have a healthy amount of empathy, which means, yeah, that's right. Just bullying, school shootings, you name it. Absolutely.
And I'm a firm believer that if you were to look at it from Columbine on up to the latest school shooting, the kids who have done that
were on meds.
9.9% of the time, they're going to be on some type of antidepressant.
That's right. That's right.
And it's I understand why people don't want to do that study, because then they're going to have to say, well, what are we going to do now? It's like, well, first, let the kids have their anxiety. Anxiety is good for your kid. And that's and now you've got me almost
within a window of tolerance, right? Within a window of tolerance, like, yes, having uncomfortable emotions is a skill. Like being able to deal with uncomfortable, it's a skill, right? But yeah, within a window of tolerance.
Yeah, well, okay. But I mean, how do we get used to getting past those uncomfortable, that anxiety and stuff? That's being, I'm sure there's probably some type of therapy where, it's almost sensory overload, and I'm not saying, throw them out into whatever triggers them and just let them have a meltdown. But at the same time, we're used to doing something, doing uncomfortable things.
Oh, yes. No, our health outcomes for our children have changed dramatically in the last 30 years. And it's a whole systemic overhaul, right? It's parents work too much. The foods aren't healthy enough. The kids aren't outside. It's screen time. It's a whole systemic problem. There's no one solution, but I would say that if I could just encourage people that there are solutions out there, and it doesn't have to come from a doctor or from a president or from right? Like I found homeopathy on Instagram and started teaching myself, and then eventually hired someone, and then eventually went to school, all this, right? But like the answers are all out there, and the answers are free, quite frankly. Right? If you have the courage to get out of your comfort zone and to try something, to go against the grain of what popular culture is doing. Right. I think we've sold our souls for an iPhone, basically,
Sadly, yeah. Yeah. And I'm one of those where I've started telling my daughter, because she's had our first grandkid, is like, oh, it's between 13 and 16. She starts screaming for her phone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think you absolutely have to give her a phone, okay, it's a Nokia.
Yeah.
We're giving her a Nokia brick phone. Right. That's all you can do on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's like, well, but there's this, and that's a lot of the same thoughts that we had. Just like, well, what if she gets lost? She's got a Nokia brick phone. She can just.
That's right.
And it takes a beating. You can hammer a nail into the wall.
That's right.
And it's great. And so she doesn't need she doesn't need Instagram at 13. And I think, and that was because she and my daughter, youngest daughter, she had several little issues that cropped up, and in hindsight, being 2020, is
Mm-hmm.
being on Instagram, seeing the the filters, over filtering of
Mm-hmm.
women
Mm-hmm.
there, and
Yeah,
and accepting the fact that, yeah, you're meant the way God wants you to be,
that's
and
right.
and
That's right. Yeah. I recently read a study that Botox is diminishing our capacity for empathy as well.
really, okay,
Yeah,
I mean, that makes sense.
because it's limiting our facial expression, and facial expression is one of the ways that, we all have mirror neurons, and it's one of the ways that we connect with others and are
Absolutely.
able to tap into empathy. And yeah, it's that whole, system of, anyways, we're in a
Yeah.
rabbit hole.
Read all those little all those
Yeah.
minor facial signals and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's how we connect. That's connection, right? We're erasing it little by slow.
And
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, a lot of the folks use it because they're like, oh, well, I've got that little crease in between my eyebrows. It's like, yeah, okay,
Well,
it's
because
cool.
at our core, we struggle to believe, I think men and women, that we're good enough, right?
Yeah.
We
Oh,
just
absolutely.
all struggle with this deep fear that we're not enough.
No, that is the big worry, is that, yeah, are we? Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing sons always turn to their dad and ask, "Am I
Mm.
good
Am
enough?"
I good enough? Wow.
And that,
Wow. Well,
and
I will tell you
hopefully
that
that hurt.
my husband's father died just last year, and I know he died with my husband, believing that he was never good enough in his dad's eyes, right? Like, and so it's beautiful that you bring that up. Yeah, was a core wound for my husband. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I mean, it's sad that is a a big wound that a lot of guys have,
Mm.
because, I mean, and we carry it with us through the rest of our life. I mean, we
Yes, it plays
turn
out
to
in
our
marriage
wife
counseling.
and we're hoping, hey, am I good enough? And when our wife comes and wants nags us about not taking the trash out,
Mhm.
all of a sudden that is us going, having a flash of shame on that.
Mm.
Oh, I'm not an adequate husband. I forgot to take the trash out this morning. I was running late, or I was chasing the dogs down the street,
Mhm.
and didn't have time to do it afterwards. So,
Mm.
we have those little shame stories that cause us to recede into away from the connection, instead of stepping up and just saying, yeah, I screwed up. And that, I think, a lot of guys, if we were to just own the the fault that they had,
Mm.
it would allow
Mm.
them to stand firmly with themselves and go, yeah, you're right, I didn't take the trash out, that was my fault, and be okay with that. You can overcome that shame just enough to where it's not going to cause you to want to retreat and
Sure, that
lean into
yeah, that's
the discussion with your wife.
what you're describing is fantastic. It's the capacity to separate a behavior from who you are, right? It's like, because I took the trash out is not a reflection on whether or not I'm good enough. It's a reflection on how with it I was this morning, or how,
Yeah.
right? Like my level of motivation, or my level of responsibility today, or my level of time management. It's not a reflection on who I am. And I think it's spot on. It's interesting in marriage counseling, in any kind of therapy, right? But marriage therapy for sure. You come in and so many people say, like, well, we need a mediator. We need a neutral third party to mediate this, right? It's like they expect me to, like, put points on the board for each other. Like,
Right.
this one goes to him.
Scorekeeping. Yes,
Yeah.
scorekeeping wins every
And that's
relationship.
not at all what marriage therapy is. But we expect it to be about communication and conflict resolution, and maybe one has anxiety and one has depression. If it's really sexy marriage therapy, maybe we're going to get into attachment styles, anxious and avoidant, and we're going to get into, right, if you're really working with someone who's experienced. But what's at the core of all of those clinical observations
What's
is
that?
a lack of self acceptance that causes us to project all these fears and insecurities onto the relationship, onto the partner, onto the external third parties that we fight about, right? My in-laws and the boys that you watch football with, right? And so what most good therapists are doing in marriage therapy is helping each person have a greater sense of self-acceptance so that they can have a greater acceptance for their partner.
Yeah.
And that is really at the core of most clinical work.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And I see that completely because yeah, that's you have to be able to be okay with yourself. Yeah, because there's only two things you have control of, and that's your thoughts and your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the story you're telling yourself, like Don Miguel Ruiz. Did you ever read
Mm-hmm.
his book,
Mm-hmm.
The Four
Mm-hmm.
Agreements?
Yep.
That's you don't have to agree that she is that you're this terrible human being just because you didn't take out the trash. That's the spell that you're putting upon
The
yourself.
spell, that's right. The death of curiosity, really, like, right? Like I wish everyone would come to see the value in curiosity and not just making assumptions like Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, right? In
Yep.
every moment about ourselves and about other people. Mm-hmm.
And to not fall upon that easy thought
That's right, the easy
is
thought. Mm-hmm.
is is a challenge, and because I mean it's an easy thought for the reason that it's easy to go to. It's easy to fall into that victim mindset and go, oh well, I'm a piece of crap. I'm never going to be any good, and then have to wait and for your wife to expel energy trying to rescue you,
That's
and
right.
it doesn't help anything, and it just allows for more conflict to continue.
Mm,
And so, but if we can stop and center ourselves, and again, when you're in the middle of a conflict, that's if you're not present and you're not mindful enough, that is darn near impossible
that's
because you
right.
are in such a panic mode. It's survival mode. My gosh, we're getting evicted from the village. How am I going to, how am I going
Yeah,
to
how am I going to survive?
survive? The
I'm a big fan
tiger
of
is going to eat me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of really simple tools too in that moment to remind because it's so right that when you need the tool the most is when you're least likely to remember it.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, right. And so, guess what? We keep a dry erase marker in our bathroom counter, and I almost always have a mirror message up there. I'm a big fan of, daily calendars. I'm a big fan of hanging certain affirmations or reminders or putting one on your in your wallet or one on your dashboard of your car, right? Like these simple tools that get overlooked to help us remember to do something. Um, these are tools that I have people use all the time.
Okay.
So that you can remember to pursue your goals. Yeah.
Okay. No, actually that's a really good. I never even thought of dry erase markers on in a mirror because
Yeah.
that right there just boom slid. I spun off onto just all different things. Because I mean, one of the things I'm trying to teach guys is just one of the ways of being a little more romantic.
Mm,
And we all fall upon the little trick of do write little messages around, and so
yeah,
to be able to take just a dry erase marker
that's right.
and have a great day, or certain make a
That's
big
right. That's
circle
right.
and most beautiful woman in the world point
That's
to
right.
the
That's
circle,
beautiful. Yeah.
and have just the fun flirtatious aspects, and even especially after you've had a fight,
Yeah.
if you can do lean into that, is though a challenge is one way to help get to the point of repair,
Repair.
because yeah,
Jinx. We're
we
synchronized, Brian. We're synchronized.
we're thinking alike. We absolutely so. But anyhow, so I do have a quick question on with therapy,
Yeah.
and it's kind of leans into a lot of things that guys who are trying their darndest to get uh, back into a better connected relationship with their wife.
Hmm.
What is a means to kind of help them do that? Because I tell the guys, it's just you have to ask questions. You have to be curious and
Hmm.
ask more and more questions. But what's some other
Mm.
ways, or a I want to, well, a hack. We'll just call it a quick hack,
Okay.
as to help them to show their wife that they are wanting to improve the connection, because a lot of times when we come out of the blue and try something new and different, I know because I've heard it from my wife many times. Is, oh, what are we trying now? Well, okay, well, you're
What
trying
are we
this out.
trying?
Okay, what's the end objective on this? Which I
Yeah.
mean, okay, yeah, there might be a little bit of nookie involved as an ulterior motive, but it's the connection we know is what's needed. We feel that distance that is formed. And so, what is something that guys can do that helps reinforce that connection and rebuild that up?
Mm. Can I give you two answers?
Sure.
Let's call it like maybe like well, I won't preface them. Okay, first one is start observing when not just your wife, also yourself, right? But start observing when your wife is has repetitive language, right? So like repetitive complaints, repetitive observations, repetitive criticisms,
Mm-hmm.
repetitive complaints about herself, about her life, about, right? Anything that's really shows up over and over and over again.
Okay.
I want you to really get good at observing that. And I want you to start to know and trust that those repetitive complaints are signs of an actual deeper issue that's not what she says it is.
Oh, okay.
So anything that's really showing up as repetitive is a sign of deeper stuck energy. It could be a childhood wound. It could be a relationship wound,
All right.
right? But I want you to start asking questions to get below that repetitive criticism. So, for instance, let's say she chronically, repetitively complains about the trash, right? But what is that really about? Is it about feeling like she doesn't matter? Is it about feeling like she's not good enough? Right? She has an internalized negative belief about something she's criticizing you for. And
Okay.
so, yeah.
Now.
Yeah. So, how can you start to get to know your wife in a meaningful enough way that you're starting to connect the dots about how she's calling your behavior related to her internalized negative self-concept, right?
Right.
Is it that she feels like she can't trust herself or you, or that she's not good enough or doesn't matter, or it's not safe for her to share her emotions, or right? So that's and the clue is always in the repetitive stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
The second thing is a deep dive. It's a deep dive, but I heard this a long time ago and it just hit home so much that I've started to bring it more and more into the work that I do with people. But when a man doesn't have any kind of a faith practice, any sort of a connection to an intelligent creator or a source energy,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's always going to be a little less grounded.
Yeah. I would agree there.
And so I would really encourage for men to cultivate some sort of faith practice and something deeper than just this meat suit, right? Like what I think, right?
Yeah.
What my opinion is in the moment. Like, what are you grounding your sort of life around, right? Whether it's, like spiritual concepts like Don Miguel Ruiz, right? But something deeper to anchor yourself to, because when your wife comes at you with the, you got to remember who you are based on something bigger than your wife's opinion or your opinion in that moment. So I know you said a hack, right? But like, really ground yourself in some capital T truth that's bigger than this fight in this moment so that you can remind yourself. And that's the kind of shit also that I might put on a mirror message, right? That's going to remind me of who I am and what I believe in a moment where she's coming from my balls.
Okay. Okay.
Did I
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
I like that. That's like the fact that of being able to find a way to especially to be able to ground yourself. That is one of those that, yeah, we are very much set back. We are easily knocked back on our heels when we are not thoroughly grounded in whatever type of belief we end up having. So yeah, and having some type of then, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a religion so much, but just some type of a truth that you
truth
thoroughly believe, and
that's right.
and that belief and is just like I tell a lot of my guys is the belief is nothing more than a thought that you perceive to be true.
Mhm.
So if you can find that truth, whether it's she is not truly mad at me, and that sinks, and you can truly believe that within your heart, then yeah, she could sit there and wail at you, and you could still be, I know she still loves me.
Mhm.
She still loves me. She's scared. She's afraid. She's either losing resources, being excluded, and because and that is something. And she's just in her mean panic. Just she's trying to communicate that don't forget about her. And if you can have the patience of doing it like that, then yeah, I get how that can help help a guy to be able to stand strong against the gale force of a pissed off wife.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So, all right, well, Don, how can people find you?
Yeah. So we talk about all this and more, right? If any of this is piqued your interest, we talk about all this and more on my podcast, Dear Divorce Diary. We talk about all the tools, right, for embodiment and grounding and recovery and all that on Dear Divorce Diary. But you can also find me at my website, dawnwigginstherapy.com. All sorts of blog posts. And, if you are curious about working together, yeah.
All right, and how when's your podcast normally come out? Usually,
Every Tuesday and Thursday.
you do it twice a week.
I know.
I'm jealous. I'd love to be able to do it twice a week, but I only have the time for one. So
I'm very blessed. I have a team, right? If I didn't have a team, yeah.
yeah, that would definitely
Usually,
cause a
yeah,
hindrance.
Tuesday is usually a longer episode, and Thursday is usually a briefer, usually to do with a tool, some sort of tool or hack, right? On Thursday,
Yeah.
a shorter episode.
All right. And that centers around women going through divorce and kind of what that kind of more along the lines of like what to expect, or just more along the lines of
It's my podcast is
mindset.
really a deep healing approach. Like we get into a lot about codependency, a lot about attachment styles. We really get to the heart of the actions, the deepest tools one needs to be using to really rehab their life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Any sort of transitional moment or moment of crisis is such a beautiful moment for a phoenix kind of vibes, to reinvent ourselves. And that's kind of when I would say I had my spiritual awakening, because I'm divorced and remarried. And so it's when I really woke up to all of this, transitioning from a victim consciousness to a place of empowerment, right? Took my life back.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really just a deep dive on how to be empowered in a deeply meaningful way.
Okay. And I will make sure to have all these links to that on the show. And guys, just to let you know, if you can, I would recommend you listen to the podcast. There's a lot of really good information. Yeah. Okay. It's easy to get past a lot of, there's not even that much chick speaks as you want to say.
No, there's not.
It's easy for us to actually to grasp and understand. Yeah, Dawn does like to talk about it through a woman's line of view, which I mean, it's easier for her to speak woman than it is dude. And it's kind of the same way. It was the reason why I went and started helping men with relationships, because I could speak dude a lot more than I could speak woman, because we do have our little way different
Nuances, right? I always say though that I was the son my father never had. So yeah, so I can go there, right? But and honestly, treat as many men as I do women. It's fascinating, and I love working with men. But sometimes when you have something like a podcast, you got to pick an audience, right? And so it's unfortunate. But yeah, I truly, truly believe that there are no victims, there are only volunteers. And so when we are talking about him or your ex or this or that, it is never in a condemning way. There are a lot of podcasts out there that are angry people that are, it's still blame shifting and all of that. And absolutely not. I honor anyone who comes and listens. We definitely have men who listen to the podcast, and yeah, you got to get past the pink branding, but yeah.
but it's all right. Heck, got my coaching certification through Brooke.
Oh, Brooke Castillo. I love her. When I heard that on your podcast, it really brought me back when I created my first course, and I don't make courses anymore because people don't complete courses, and that didn't feel fulfilling or rewarding to me. Yeah. So that was like not aligned. But I listened to her podcast from the beginning, right? She recommends you started her podcast episode 1, 2, 3. And I used some of her content in some of my course creation. So love her.
Yeah, she's absolutely great. It kind of makes me sad. She's gotten to the level now where she's only putting an episode out about once a month. So it's like, she's having fun. She's following Christian around his golf game. So and so it's fun to watch that and to just see how things, and I get to look forward to seeing how things change.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah, she was Brooke is fashioned towards women also.
Yeah.
But still, there's us occasional dudes that pop up. So.
I love that. It's such an essential part of healing the fabric of society and community, right? It takes all of us doing our part to open our hearts. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Don, I will go ahead and I'll let you go. And thanks again for coming on. And you've helped the men who are listening out. You've helped them out tremendously.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
All right. Take care.